Yggdrasil, this tree changed everything I knew about the forest. The Blackwood Forest had always been in my blood. My father, a biologist like myself, vanished within its ancient depths when I was just a boy. Officially, he was declared lost, presumed dead. Unofficially, the whispers always hinted at something more, something the forest had taken. I swore I'd never follow in his footsteps, but the pull of the Blackwood, the mysteries it held, were too strong to resist. I returned, a decade after his disappearance, armed with a doctorate and a burning need to understand what he had been studying. My focus was the old-growth ecosystem, the intricate web of life that thrived beneath the towering canopy. The forest was a cathedral of Douglas fir, western hemlock, and ancient cedars, a place where sunlight struggled to reach the forest floor. It was beautiful, yes, but also oppressive, a place where you could easily get lost, not just physically, but mentally. My research team and I were mapping a remote quadrant of the forest, cataloging plant and animal species when I stumbled upon it. It wasn't just a large tree, it was something else entirely. I've seen big trees, monsters of the forest hundreds of feet tall, but this one dwarfed them all. It was impossibly large, its trunk so wide it would take a dozen people to encircle it. The bark was unlike anything I'd ever seen, a swirling, intricate pattern that seemed to shift and change in the light. It pulsed with a strange energy, a palpable vibration that you could feel in your bones. I called it Yggdrasil after the mythical world tree of Norse legend. It seemed fitting. Initially, my interest was purely scientific. I meticulously documented its dimensions, took bark samples, and analyzed the surrounding soil. The data was anomalous. The tree was older than anything I could comprehend, possibly thousands of years old. The soil around it was unusually rich, teeming with microbial life, and the plants nearby exhibited accelerated growth, reaching sizes far exceeding their normal potential. The wildlife was also affected. Deer were larger, more docile. Birds sang in complex, almost melodic patterns. Even the insects seemed different, more vibrant, more intelligent. I shared my findings with Dr. Anya Sharma, my mentor and a close family friend. She was a seasoned botanist and mycologist, someone whose opinion I deeply respected. Initially, she dismissed my findings as hyperbole, but when I showed her the data, the photos, the samples, her skepticism began to waver. "This is remarkable, Elias," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "But be careful. Some things are best left undisturbed." Her warning did little to dissuade me. I was consumed by Yggdrasil, driven by a need to understand its origins, its purpose, its power. The more I studied it, the stranger things became. We started hearing things in the forest, whispers carried on the wind, rustling leaves that sounded like voices. Our equipment malfunctioned inexplicably. And then the disappearances began. First, it was a logger, a local man named Dale who was working a few miles from our camp. He vanished without a trace. Sheriff Brody, a weary, overworked man who knew the Blackwood better than anyone, wrote it off as an accident, a fall, a wandering off course. But I knew better. Something was wrong. Then one of my research assistants, a young woman named Emily, disappeared. She had been collecting soil samples near Yggdrasil. We searched for days, but found nothing, not even a trace of her gear. The forest had simply swallowed her whole. That's when the nightmares started. I dreamt of my father, standing at the foot of Yggdrasil, his face etched with fear and awe. He reached out to me, his voice a mere whisper, "Don't wake it, Elias, don't wake it." I couldn't shake the feeling that Yggdrasil was somehow connected to my father's disappearance. That it was more than just a tree, that it was something ancient, something powerful, something malevolent. Driven by desperation, I sought out old Man Hemlock, a recluse who lived in a remote cabin deep in the forest. He was a repository of local folklore, a keeper of the old ways. He was also rumored to be touched. He was reluctant to speak at first, his eyes filled with a deep-seated fear. But after hours of pleading, I managed to pry some information from him. He spoke of a time long ago when the forest was ruled by ancient beings, beings of wood and earth, of shadow and light. He spoke of a great tree, a gateway to another world, a source of immense power. He called it the heart of the wood. "The tree sleeps," he rasped, his voice like dry leaves rustling in the wind. "But it can be awakened, and when it wakes, the forest hungers." His words chilled me to the bone. I knew then that Yggdrasil was not just a tree, it was something far more sinister. Around this time, Sarah Walker, a journalist, came to town. She was investigating a series of ecological anomalies and strange disappearances in the area. She was sharp, driven, and fearless. She also believed that the local logging company, Blackwood Industries, was polluting the water, and that was part of the reason for the disappearances and why things were changing. Initially, I brushed her off, but when she started asking questions about the disappearances, about Yggdrasil, I realized she was on to something. We decided to pool our resources, to work together to uncover the truth. Sheriff Brody, initially skeptical, started to come around after another logger, and then a young boy vanished from a nearby village. The evidence was scant, but the fear in the town was palpable. Even he couldn't ignore the unsettling feeling that something was terribly wrong. The four of us, Elias, Anya, Sarah, and Brody, formed an uneasy alliance. We ventured deeper into the forest, following a trail of strange occurrences that led us back to Yggdrasil. The closer we got, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air grew thick and heavy, filled with the scent of decay and something else, something sweet and cloying. The trees seemed to lean in, watching us, judging us. We discovered a hidden grove beneath Yggdrasil, a place where the forest floor pulsed with an unnatural energy. In the center of the grove was a gaping hole leading down into darkness. The air around the hole shimmered as if it were a portal to another dimension. We lowered a camera into the hole, and the images that came back were indescribable. Twisted, grotesque shapes pulsating with light shifting and changing in the darkness. It was a nightmare made real. As we watched the images, Dr. Sharma gasped. "The mycelial network," she whispered. "It's connected. The entire forest is connected to this tree through a vast network of fungal roots. It's like a single, living organism." We realized then that Yggdrasil was not just a tree, it was the central node of a vast, ancient network, a living intelligence that permeated the entire forest, and it was awake. Suddenly, the ground began to tremble. The trees swayed violently. A deafening roar echoed through the forest. Something was coming. We turned to flee, but it was too late. The forest had us surrounded. Vines snaked out from the trees, grasping at our limbs. The ground beneath our feet turned to mud, sucking us down. Dr. Sharma pushed me forward, shoving me toward the edge of the grove. "Go, Elias, get out of here, tell them what you've seen," before I could protest. She was engulfed by the vines, dragged down into the darkness. I heard a scream, then silence. I stumbled through the forest, pursued by the relentless tendrils of Yggdrasil. The trees seemed to mock me, their branches reaching out like skeletal arms. The ground shifted and twisted, trying to trip me. Sarah and Brody were right behind me, firing their weapons into the dense undergrowth. They managed to keep the vines at bay, but they were losing ground. As we ran, I noticed strange symbols carved into the bark of Yggdrasil. I recognized them from old Man Hemlock's descriptions. They were ancient runes, a language of the forest. Using my knowledge of botany and a survival knife, I started hacking away at the roots of the tree. I was driven by pure instinct. The symbols burned against my skin as I touched them. It was painful, but also felt like I was drawing from the tree's energy. I deciphered the runes, realizing they were a binding spell, a way to contain the tree's power. I frantically began to dismantle the spell, hoping to weaken Yggdrasil's influence. As I worked, the forest grew even more hostile. The vines tightened their grip. The ground opened up beneath my feet. I knew I was running out of time. Finally, I severed the last root, breaking the binding spell. The forest went silent. The vines recoiled. The ground stopped trembling. Yggdrasil shuddered, its immense trunk swaying in the wind. A wave of energy emanated from the tree, knocking me off my feet. I lay on the ground, gasping for breath as the forest around me began to change. The trees withered, the plants wilted, the animals fled. Yggdrasil's power was fading, but something else was happening as I touched the root system and completed the final sever. A strange coldness swept over me, and I felt like something took over my mind. Then I saw my father. He was standing before me, smiling sadly. "You did it, Elias," he said. "You broke the spell, but you paid a price." I looked down at my hands. They were covered in bark. Roots were growing from my fingertips. "You are now a part of the forest, Elias." My father said, "You are now the guardian of Yggdrasil. You have broken the binding spell, but you have now bound yourself to the tree." I screamed, but no sound came out. My voice was now the rustling of leaves, the creaking of branches, the whisper of the wind. Sarah and Brody found me lying at the foot of the tree. They tried to help me, but it was too late. I was transforming, becoming one with the forest. They managed to drag me out of the Blackwood Forest, but the transformation was irreversible. I am no longer Elias Thorne, the wildlife biologist. I am something else, something more. I am haunted by visions, memories that are not my own. I feel the pulse of the forest, the slow, steady rhythm of life and death. I know that Yggdrasil is still there, dormant but not dead. And I know that I am the only one who can stop it if it ever awakens again. But what frightens me the most is that I also feel it now, a deep connection to the tree, a part of it living inside of me. I am not sure if I can or even want to fight it. Now, months later, I sit at my window in the town of Blackwood, watching the forest loom in the distance. Sarah and Brody have posted guards at the edge of the forest. We have cut off the route and put fences up, but something is happening to the residents around the forest. And then I notice something growing in my garden, a sapling, small and fragile, but with the same swirling patterns on its bark as Yggdrasil. My mind is going. I feel it. I see it. The spreading.